His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki, Shri Shri Nitai Gaura Sundara Ki, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki, Shri Ram Navami Mahotsava Ki, Go Premanande. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai, Shri Ram Navami Mahotsava Ki Jai. How wonderful to be with you on this wonderful day, glorious day, the appearance day of Lord Ramachandra, Shri Ram Navami. Very nice. So we'll begin. Of course, there are many things to be said, many wonderful things to be said. But let us begin by reading a couple of verses or so from Srimad Bhagavatam. We will start off with, from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 10, which is titled The Pastimes of the Supreme Lord Ramachandra. And we'll begin by reading verse 2. Tasyapi Bhagavan Esha Sakshad Brahmamayo Hari Amshang Shena Chaturdagat Putra Tvam Prartita Surai Rama Lakshmana Bharata Shatrugna iti samgyaya. Translation: being prayed for by the demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth Himself, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai. Let me begin again. Being prayed for by the demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth Himself, directly appeared with His expansion and expansions of the expansion. Their holy names were Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna. These celebrated incarnations thus appeared in 4 forms as the sons of Maharaj Dasarath. And we'll read another couple of verses, let's see. Let's read verse 4. I may just read the translation. Actually, I'll read verses 6 and 7. They're very nice verses. Yo lokavira samito danar aisham ugram. Ceta Swayamvara grihe trishato panitam. Adaya bala gajalila ivekshu yashtim, sajyi kritam nripave krishya babanjaman ye. Jitvanu rupa gunashila vayonga rupam, Ceta bidam shriyam uras yabilabdam nanam, Marge vrajan brigupatir vyanayat prarudham, Darpam mahim akritayastira raja bijam. Very beautiful Sanskrit. O king, so this is Shukadev Goswami who's speaking. O king, the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra were wonderful, like those of a baby elephant. In the assembly where Mother Ceta was to choose her husband, in the midst of the heroes of this world, he broke the bow belonging to Lord Shiva. This bow was so heavy that it was carried by 300 men. But Lord Ramachandra bent and strung it and broke it in the middle, just as a baby elephant breaks a stick of sugar cane. Thus the Lord achieved the hand of Mother Ceta, who was equally as endowed with transcendental qualities of form, beauty, behavior, age, and nature. Indeed, she was the goddess of fortune, who constantly rests on the chest of the Lord. While returning from Sita's home, after gaining her at the assembly of competitors, Lord Ramachandra met Parashuram. Although Parashuram was very proud, having rid the earth of the royal order 21 times, he was defeated by the Lord, who appeared to be a Kshatriya of the royal order. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha paditanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Devotees, there's so many things that can be said. We can have a seminar for some days. In fact, I've done that in the past. 5 or 6 days, seminar on Lord Raam, from different perspectives and different aspects of his personality, his relationship with Mother Ceta, different pastimes. And it's just amazing. It's nectar. So there is a description. It's an interesting description. In comparison, you could say, of Lord Raam, Lord Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya. Lord Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Complete. Total, the actual absolute truth in full. And he is known as Leela Purushottama. Purushottama means the supreme person, and Leela, of course, means the pastimes. So Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord who is particularly attractive, well, in all ways, really, but particularly his pastimes are just the best. And actually, nobody else's pastimes, not even other forms of himself, their pastimes, cannot really be compared with Lord Krishna's. Lord Chaitanya, on the other hand, in this context is known as Prema Purushottama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose particular distinguishing feature is his prema, his Krishna prema, his love for himself in his capacity as a devotee. And Lord Ram, he is known as Maryada Purushottama, the Supreme Lord, who is particularly known for his righteousness, his morality, his upright character, like this, his honesty, these types of qualities. This is what Maryada indicates. So, actually, Ceta and Raam, they are none other than Radha and Krishna. They are none other than Radha and Krishna. They're not two other people who are just sort of related or similar or comparable. They're actually the same persons in person. So when we talk about the pastimes of Ceta and Raam, or the relationship of Ceta and Raam, we're talking about the relationship of Radha and Krishna. But still, having said that, still there are differences in terms of what we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the different natures, the nature of Lord Krishna and the nature of Lord Ram. So the relationship between Ceta, whereas the relationship between Radha and Krishna is sort of, well, what to say, very free, and there you could say, sort of in a sense, at least the terminology is used sometimes, they're like boyfriend and girlfriend, something like that. And sometimes they get up to some mischief, and sometimes Krishna steals the butter, but in relation to Radharani and the gopis, sometimes he steals their clothes, of all of them. Lord Ram does not do things like that. No. He's very morally upright, righteous, strict in his adherence to the standards. But he is Krishna. He is Krishna. But Krishna, who is showing a particular side of his nature and not really showing that side, that sort of, whatever you'd say, mischievous, youthful type of side, but he's more like the righteous prince and eventually the righteous king. And he's very much the righteous husband. Yeah, so there are differences. There are very significant differences. But if you look into the characters of Radha and Krishna and Ceta and Ram, then you can see, you can understand, at least you can get a glimpse of how Ceta and Ram, they are actually Radha and Krishna, but only manifesting themselves and their personalities, their natures, and their relationship in certain respects, and in other respects that they're not manifesting. So that righteousness of Lord Raam and the righteousness generally of his relationship with Mother Ceta is oftentimes, or usually, rarely, easier for people to relate with than Krishna and his nature, and Radha and Krishna and their relationship, which, you know, the rasa dance, dancing sometimes with the wives of other men. For devotees who understand these things, it's wonderful. It's just the most wonderful, actually. But for those who are not really so tuned in spiritually, it leaves them confused and doubtful sometimes, even though actually it's the most glorious and wonderful transcendental thing. So, but today we're focusing on Ceta and Raam, and what wonderful, amazing, transcendental personalities they are. So we read a couple of verses there, and there was mention of Lord Raam and Mother Ceta becoming married, how they became married. There was what they call a Swayamvara Ceremony, which means that the young lady gets the opportunity either to just choose herself from a number of young men, or there's a number of young men and they compete in order to win her hand. So the nature of Mother Ceta, as we said, she is a form of Srimati Radharani, actually. Not fully manifest, but definitely not anyone other than Radharani herself. So Mother Ceta, well, she is the source of Lakshmi. The verse, one of those verses we read, it was saying how she is Lakshmi herself. And actually, she is not just Lakshmi herself. She is the source of Lakshmi herself. She is greater than Lakshmi Devi. So that means, of course, she is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. Durga, the presiding deity of this material nature, she's also a type of expansion from Radharani through Ceta, through Lakshmi, but small little expansion. They say there's in, Brahma Samhita or Gopal Tapani Upanishad, there's a discussion there of Durga compared to Radharani, Ceta, Lakshmi. And what is said is that Durga, of course, Durga by our standards, in terms of our capacities and capabilities, Durga is so much more powerful than us. She's generally got all the living entities, not just in South Africa, not just on this planet, but in the whole universe, completely under her control. And they just cannot move a millimeter without her mercy. But compared to these great transcendental ladies, Radharani Ceta Lakshmi. What's described, the way it's put, is that she is like a little reflection, a little beam coming from one of the toenails of Srimati Radharani. Just from one of the toenails. Radharani's toenails are effulgent. She doesn't need to put, colored stuff on to make her toenails look nice. But her toenails are just naturally effulgent. So one toenail, just one little beam of light from one toenail. Durga is something like that. There's a relationship, but on a very, very small scale. But Mother Ceta, who is the source of Mahalakshmi, and who's coming directly from Radharani, she is so powerful. It's amazing. It's beyond amazing. It's inconceivable. So, what was mentioned there about Lord Ram lifting the bow, do you remember it said, lifting the bow, stringing the bow, he won the hand of Sita Devi. So actually, just to give us a little perspective on Sita, on Ram, and on Ravana. Haribol. Boo. Ravana. The great demon. The bow was in the palace of Maharaj Janaka, the father of Mother Ceta, on some sort of little, I don't know what you'd say, little sort of stand with wheels. It was sitting there, waiting for that competition which was going to happen shortly. Lord Shiva had dropped it off with Janaka Maharaj. So the idea was that the young princes and kshatriyas, warriors, they would come, and whoever could lift the bow, string it, and then fire an arrow, use it, would get the hand of Sita. So the bow was sitting there, waiting. And one day, just before the event, just shortly before the event, Mother Ceta was in the courtyard, one of the courtyards of the palace, with some of her girlfriends playing a ball game and throwing the ball back and forth and laughing and jumping and playing around. But the ball got stuck in a tree and they couldn't get the ball out of the tree. So what to do? So Mother Ceta said, "Oh, I know, let's get the bow." It was just sort of in the next room. I mean, they're in an open courtyard. The bow's just in a room right next to them, more or less. So she went in and picked up the bow with one hand. Now the verse, if you remember, the verse said that bow could only be lifted by 300 men. And 300 men doesn't mean your typical Phoenix factory worker. Man, not one of them. 300 men. I mean, these big warrior kshatriyas, just, muscle-bound characters. 300, otherwise couldn't be moved. But Mother Ceta, she went in and with one hand she picked up the bow because she's very powerful. She's the goddess of fortune. Yes, spiritual energy of the Lord. She just picked it up, took it outside, and used it to poke it, and got the ball out of the tree, and then went and put it back. And it was like just, nothing special. When the Swayamvara happened, that competition, just a few days later, Lord Raam came. He had heard about Ceta. As the verse said, she was equally qualified in intelligence and beauty and character. She's his eternal consort, of course. So Lord Raam came to participate in the event, and various other princes and warriors and these big, powerful nobility, royalty. So the bow is lying there. First thing, you got to pick it up. And when you got it up, you got to string it. No one could pick it up because it's Lord Shiva's bow, and Lord Shiva, in his own way, is also very powerful. The only one who managed to pick it up was the second to last competitor, who was Ravan. He was there also. He wanted to win her hand. So Ravan, he managed to pick it up, meaning off the stand. It's lying flat. He managed to get it up a few inches. It was a real battle, a real struggle, but he managed somehow to get it up, and he's straining, but he couldn't manage, and he didn't actually drop it, but it dropped on his fingers. And now his fingers are caught. His fingers are getting crushed. Yeah. And Lord Raam, who was the last competitor, walked up and said, "Can I help? Can I help you?" And with one hand, just picked it up, and Ravana's hands were freed. And then, of course, as was described there, then Lord Raam, he picked it up and strung it and pulled the string, and the bow broke, just snapped in half. Because for him, it's nothing. It's just nothing. Less than nothing. But it's a very interesting point to consider when we come to the pastime of the kidnapping of Ceta. I'm sure you're all basically familiar with many of the things which happen in the course of the pastimes of Lord Raam. But one famous, extremely crucial and famous incident is the kidnapping of Mother Ceta by the same Ravana, who just couldn't manage to lift it. The bow, but Mother Ceta just lifted it with one hand, just playing around. So Mother Ceta is so powerful. She is the spiritual energy personified, presiding deity. And Ravana, he's a conditioned soul. He has a material body. And he's under Durga. He's under the control of Durga Devi. So how's he going to kidnap Ceta? How's it possible? It's all Leela. It's just part of the pastimes. Otherwise, there's just no question of Ravana having the ability to overpower Ceta and take hold of her and control her and take her away and keep her captive. There's no question. It's part of the Leela. It's part of the Leela. Just like Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, he's such a devotee, eternal associate. That's all he does is travel with Krishna and be with Krishna in his pastimes. That's what he does. So how did Arjuna become bewildered and think that, I should not fight. I must not fight because it's bad. Krishna may tell me to fight, but no, Krishna got confused. It's wrong. I must not fight. It's Leela. It's the pastime of the Lord. And in those pastimes in which devotees get placed in unexpected situations, you could say, generally speaking, that happens in order to teach us, the would-be devotees, the aspiring devotees, the hoping to become real devotees, that's us. To teach the devotees in Phoenix something about what is Krishna consciousness, how to become Krishna conscious, and how to progress. Yes, so it's all very interesting and very important, and in many ways it's very instructive for people like ourselves. So, just as an example, I said how Lord Raam is so righteous and upstanding and moral and just always does the right thing, will never do the wrong thing. When he was banished, exiled, 14 years in the forest by the arrangement, if you could put it, I guess you could say arrangement of Kaikeyi, who was one of the wives of Lord Ram's father, Maharaj Dasarath. So the day before Lord Ram was to be installed, established as the crown prince, means it's official. He's going to become the king in due course. Yeah, it's like a sort of pre-coronation event. So the day before, Kaikeyi, who was one of the wives, we said, not the mother of Lord Ram, but the mother of Bharat. Lord Ram's mother is Kausalya. So Kaikeyi, what had happened, it's a long story. This is one thing about Krishna consciousness. You must know, we have many long stories. And we have some real super duper long stories. And the story of Lord Ram is definitely one of them. But just to, make a little excerpt. This Kaikeyi had saved the life of Dasarath in a battle. Yeah. And he had told her, tell me what you want, it's yours. And at the time, it was some years before, at the time said, well, let me think about it, and later on, I won't forget, later on, I'll come to you and I'll say, yeah, okay, you said you would give me whatever I want, so this is what I want. So that's what happened. She came to Dasarath and said, you told me I could have what I want, so what I want is that my son, Bharat, he will become the king. He'll become the crown prince and then become the king. And Ram will be exiled, banished for 14 years. And this is the day before the big event with Lord Raam. And Dasarath was devastated, to put it mildly, totally devastated. But there was nothing he could do because he had given his word. And these are people who don't break their words, you know. Such people are not common these days. But in those days, the big Kshatriyas, they were like that. And Raam was like that. So, okay, the arrangement is there. What could Dasarath do? And then he and Kaikeyi went to tell Raam, this is the situation. And Kaikeyi, well, Dasarath was unable to speak, just too much overwhelmed. So Kaikeyi informed Lord Raam. But before she actually told him that you're going to be banished, she came and she said, you know, we got some really bad news for you. Have we got some bad news for you? Oh, when you hear this, you are going to go into shock completely. Yeah, this is such bad news for you. And then Lord Raam interrupted her and said, there's no need to say such things to me, my lady. On the king's order, I am in fact prepared to jump into fire. Commanded by him who is my preceptor, father, king, and benefactor, I'm ready to drink strong poison or throw myself into the ocean. Tell me, my lady, what the king's request is. I shall do it, I promise. Raam does not speak twice. This is just a little insight into his character in that regard. It's really amazing. It's said that Lord Raam had 3 ones. 3 ones. Like here, 1 word. If there's some decision to be made or something like that, he has 1 word. No flexi speak, changing his opinion and, you know, every now and then. Just 1 word. And when he's stated the 1 word, he's committed. Then 1 wife. 1 wife. No playing around. In those days, of course, it was not uncommon, or it was common actually, for the Kshatriyas, the royal order, to have more than 1 wife. And indeed, Dasarath, Raam's father, had more than 1 wife. But Lord Raam, setting an example, he had 1 wife. And for an enemy, and he had enemies, of course, from time to time, 1 arrow. These are the 3 ones of Lord Raam. 1 word, 1 wife, 1 arrow. So yes, so Lord Raam then was informed that this is a situation. You're not going to be the crown prince tomorrow, Bharatas, and you are going to go into exile in the forest for 14 years. And that's it. And Lord Raam embraced that. As we read, he just embraced it. If that's my father's order, then not only will I accept it like, oh, okay, I'll do it then, but I will embrace it if that's my Father's order, I will just embrace it as the most wonderful thing in my life, the only thing in my life. And then he went to Mother Ceta to inform her this is the situation. And he told Mother Ceta that, I've been banished to the forest for 14 years. So, you'll stay here, of course, in the palace, and I'll be back in 14 years. And Mother Ceta said, when are we going? And Lord Raam said, we are not going. I am going, and you are staying. And Mother Ceta, sometime when we get the time, we should read through her presentation to Lord Raam about how she is coming. Yeah, it's really quite amazing. I'll just read a few sentences. This is Mother Ceta telling Lord Raam, I am coming. If you leave for the impenetrable wilderness today, O Raam, I will walk ahead of you, crushing the sharp thorns and blades of kusha grass with my bare feet, in this way sparing your feet from any pain. I will walk before you, scouting for danger, and will only eat the remnants of your food. There is no, listen to this is very interesting. There is no sin in me for which I should be left behind. In all circumstances, shelter in the shade of the feet of one's husband is better than residence in a palace, in the heavenly planets, or travel through outer space. I do not need any instruction at this time regarding how I should act. Don't be despondent. What are you afraid of, that you're prepared to abandon me, who am completely devoted to you? Know that I am as devoted to you as the chaste Savitri was to Satyavan. That's another story. In my life, I have never even mentally looked at another man, as do women who disgrace their families. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that Ceta says about why she's coming and why she is not staying, even though Lord Raam is telling her to stay. So then they went, and Lakshman, of course, went with them. He was not banished, but he volunteered to go as an assistant, and he told Lord Raam, I will protect you. I will stay awake 24 hours a day for 14 years. Just to make sure nothing happens to you and Ceta. And Lord Raam said, well, how are you going to do that? And then Lakshman's wife, Urmila, stepped forward and said, I will sleep for 14 years. I'll sleep for myself, and I'll sleep for my husband. So she stayed and slept. Lakshman went and didn't sleep for 14 years. Yeah, and so many things happened. Like I said, long story, but not so much time today. Yes. So what to say? Well, here's an interesting little incident. You know, Hanuman, Lord Raam with Hanuman, of course, whenever you hear talk of Lord Raam, Hanuman must be there and is there. And in fact, what is it? In about a week or something is Hanuman Jayanti, and we'll have some programs, I'm sure. Hanuman Katha. But they went into the forest. Ceta got kidnapped. It's all part of the Leela. Don't worry too much. Lord Raam came, crossed the ocean to Lanka, killed Ravana, rescued Ceta, and, many things, so many things. And then Lord Raam, after all of this, Lord Raam thanked everyone. Lord Raam thanked everyone and gave all the monkeys and the bears, that was his army mainly, monkeys and bears, he gave them all gifts as at least a little reciprocation for the service they'd done. He gave them gifts, but Hanuman was right at the end, last one in the line. And finally he got there to Lord Raam. And Lord Raam said, Hanuman, you're the last. Lord Raam is actually testing him. You're the last one. I've run out of gifts. Nothing left. Sorry, what to do? And Hanuman said, no problem, no problem. You gave people money and ornaments and different things. I don't want any of that. I just want one thing from you. And it's a very small thing. In fact, it's the smallest thing. That's what I want from you. The very smallest thing that you have. And Lord Raam is doesn't really know what's going on. And Lord Raam said, well, what do you want? What is it? What's this smallest thing? And Hanuman said, I want your name. That's all. I just want your name, Raam. Just let me have your name. Because in your name is everything. The whole universe, the whole of existence, everything's within your name. So please just let me have your name. This is well before Lord Chaitanya, who spread the chanting of the names. But Hanuman is famous for being into the names of the Lord. So last thing I'll say. Last little thing. Famous little story. And you're probably well aware of this because we've told it many times before. When they're just going into exile, and they're going, what would you say, east, kind of southeast, through Bihar, if you know the geography, Jharkhand, down that way, towards Orissa, kind of that part of India. And they came to the Sarayu River. And it's a big river. It's about 1 kilometer across. And they needed to get a boat across the Sarayu River. They found a boat and a boatman. And Lord Raam asked, so how much do you want? What's the charge going to be? And the boatman said, We'll talk about it when we get to the other side. You know, in other words, he's like an experienced Indian businessman. Don't worry about the cost. We'll talk about it at the end. So don't worry. When we get to the other side, we can talk about it. So off they go on the boat. And as they're going, the boatman is just looking at Lord Raam and Mother Ceta, and tears are just pouring from his eyes as he's rowing and looking at them. And then they reach the other side. And Lord Raam says to Mother Ceta, okay, we must pay him. What shall we give him? And she had a pearl necklace on. And Mother Ceta said, well, you know, we're going to be in the forest for 14 years. I don't need this necklace. Let's give him the necklace. So Lord Raam took it and tried to give it to the boatman. And the boatman said, no, 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 no. And he said a very extraordinary thing. He said, in this area, all of the boatmen, we have an agreement that when another boatman gets on our boat to cross a river, we don't charge him. We don't charge each other. We give each other free rides. Everyone else pays. But the boatmen, we don't charge them. And he said to Lord Raam, and you are a boatman, so I'm not going to charge you. I can't. And Lord Raam said, what do you mean I'm a boatman? I'm not a boatman. I'm a Kshatriya. I'm a prince. And I cannot accept charity. So here, take this necklace. And the man said, no, 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 I can't. You are a boatman. I have my little boat. I take people from one side of the river to the other. You have a big boat. And on your big boat, you take people from one side of the ocean of birth and death to the other side, the spiritual world. So you're a boatman and I cannot charge you. And Lord Raam laughed. But the boatman said, just one thing though. The thing is, my condition is that now I'm letting you have this boat ride free. When the time comes, the end of my life comes, and it's my time to get on your boat, for you to take me to the other side of the ocean of birth and death, you must not charge me. And Lord Raam said, all right, it's a deal. So yeah. Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Ke. Shri Ram Navami Mahotsava Ke. Srila Prabhupada Ke. Go Premanande.